Hope you're having a happy 2022. It's a new year, a new chance to make a new life. But it isn't going to be a lot different until all the pandemics go away. They just seem to keep coming back and back and back. Hope you're all well, happy, had a happy holiday. And today we're going to do something a little different. I have Eugene Dowdy, who is the director of the Hill Country Symphony and does a lot of other things with music, an expert on music, as my guest. Welcome, Gene.
Thank you.
And he goes by Gene.
That's right.
Yes. And we're going to talk about how music actually can bring world peace. It brings international joy and international culture and international friendship, because there's no holdback as far as language or culture or any of those things. The notes are the same around the world, right?
Well, absolutely. Music unites us. It is a common theme at every one of our events that we celebrate in our life, from birth to death. And so music is there every step of the way, and we can't live without it.
So the history of the Hill Country Symphony is, when was it founded?
Well, in 2000. So we're in our 21st season.
Oh.
And it's been a joy to be associated with the Symphony of the Hills as well as with Schreiner University. And I can tell you that, as you said, it changes lives. And that community is united behind their orchestra. So I'm very grateful to be a part of that.
How many members do you have?
Well, we have 70 members in the Symphony
70?
of the Hills. And they're professional musicians from the Hill Country, but also from San Antonio, Austin. We have a flutist that flies in from Philadelphia.
Are they local, or did you bring them in?
They're mostly local professionals who drive from either San Antonio or the Hill Country community. Many of them are band and orchestra directors in our community also.
And you're funded how?
The board is the symphony is funded by a board of directors, and they are volunteers, and they make sure that the symphony has what we need to operate. We give 5 concerts a year, including 2 concerts, Rita, for 1,600 children in the community. And they're bussed in and watch concerts. Also, we send our musicians out to the elementary schools that are going to visit our concert. Every one of them get visited by a symphony musician. So it's a beautiful concept of bringing music to young people.
Do they have fundraising drives to keep it supported? Or?
Sure. The board, first off, sells tickets, so they love our patrons. In the Hill Country, we're so proud to have the Kathleen Callow Theater. It's a gem of the Texas Hill Country, and the symphony performs our season there. And that theater is usually pretty full with our Hill Country friends and people who drive from all around. So they make their budget that way. And we also have patrons who give beyond the season ticket cost to make sure that the orchestra is well funded. And we also have some foundations and corporations and very generous individuals. So we're very lucky.
Smart operation. We talk about, international music. Actually, did a little research, and the first instruments were actually religious connected. The drums and the cymbals.
Isn't that true?
The Greeks did that. And anyway, one of the things that we have locally is the musical bridge around the world.
Anya Gurkovsky's group. Fantastic.
Evidently they're based here, but we have a video on that because it shows what music can do on an international basis. So they're going to roll the video.
Musical Bridges Around the World is a multicultural arts organization focused on education and creating one-of-a-kind performances by internationally renowned artists for the benefit of the general public and underserved youth, while fostering San Antonio's reputation as a cosmopolitan cultural center. All of our performances are free. What makes our programming unique is the pairing of Grammy Award-winning artists with folk, classical, and jazz musicians across genres. Works are often commissioned by musical bridges for world premieres, and artists frequently develop future collaborations after meeting in San Antonio, Texas.
The next, I believe the next program at San Fernando is in February.
I'd
I
have
had
to
a
check,
schedule
but
and I-
the website, they'll be sure to tell us.
Very nice. They bring in international entertainers, mostly classical, and it's free, and it's on a Sunday evening. Very, very nice. The acoustics in the cathedral are excellent.
Excellent.
And so it really, really is nice. Okay, the history of music is as international as the music itself, because the Greeks they came out with the drums, and then the Italians and the French came out with some string instruments. Tell me, you know more about it than I do.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the Greeks, Rita, because actually Pythagoras was one of the first music theorists, because Pythagoras would take this monochord. He would literally put two nails in a board, string a wire, strum it, and from that he deduced an entire ratio that led to our modern day scale and understanding of harmony. So all the way back to Pythagoras, we know they were making music. We don't know exactly what it sounded like, but the iconographic evidence is clear. They had stringed instruments, trumpets, cymbals, and as you mentioned in the Bible, in religious music of all kinds, Eastern religions, music was always an important part of that. So you're quite right. And then the development of the string family happened with the wonderful setting with troubadours and trouvères and these singers. You mentioned France. They had this fiddle called a rebec that was a tavern fiddle of sorts, and later becoming the violin and the modern string family. And so that led to our orchestral situation today.
The guitar was one of the last ones.
Well, and the guitar back in the Middle Ages, very active in the as the lute. So they had some wonderful instruments. In the eastern side, they had the oud. A good friend of mine, Dr. Ethan Wickman, is an expert on that instrument. People love bringing back the ancient instruments and playing them today. It's a joy.
And the opera, I always liked opera, but I never understood it. And I'm really not an expert on classical music. But the other day I watched one on Channel 10 where you've got the...
Subtitles?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I never realized they were all their dramas. And if they would... That's one place where international is the music, and evidently Italian is the language they use. But they really need to translate it into a language that you can understand. It's almost like a daytime soap opera.
It is. You think about the telenovelas in our Latin friends who have these wonderful dramas that occur, soap operas, and think about the music and how dramatic it can be. You mentioned opera. There's so many wonderful cultures who have produced music drama. In the East, they have operas with string instruments and these beautiful coda ensembles and things. So I think the point you're making is that music can tell a story, and it can illustrate even beyond the text. But you've got to have those subtitles, or it's fun to listen to opera, but when you have those subtitles, you really know what's going on, and it can make your heart just break with emotion with what's happening.
The music, what I'm trying to say, the build-up, the first music was church, but then it was what, Baroque? Or,
Probably Middle Ages and Renaissance. The church.
It graduated.
Well, the church led the way with music, and mainly because they had the resources and they started to write it down. That's also part of it, is that some of the early church music, they had these notations where shaped notes and things where we can tell how the music sounded. Now, there was active social music going on among secular friends, but they weren't as good as writing it down. It was passed on by ear. And so we've probably lost some great music that way, but it's important to get that music written down.
And so the exchanging of the between countries of their music is what, and the music was the notes which everybody understood, and the performers were going back and forth, and they could speak different languages. It didn't matter. The music.
Well, you think about you made me just think about the importance of our world's fairs. We have our beautiful Hemisphere Tower because of the 1968 World's Fair held here in San Antonio, and we brought music from all over the world was played here. Now, obviously, we are closer to the Southern Hemisphere, so we obviously celebrated a lot of Mexican, Latin, Hispanic music, which is such an important part of our fabric here in San Antonio. And so to this day, it's still lovely to hear that music played, not only by symphony orchestras, but by, all the genre bands that we love to hear, mariachi, conjunto, there's just so many beautiful kinds of music that celebrate our different cultures.
Well, and it links cultures. I mean, the black music, the religious, the jazz, and that brought them, actually Motown is what brought them all forward. And because their skin was different, that didn't matter. They could entertain, and they had the music in their souls.
Well, you think about
and
Aretha.
then they went overseas, and you have this cross link, which is, it's amazing.
Well, you think about Aretha Franklin growing up in the church, singing that life-changing church music, but then she became one of our greatest soul and R&B singers that the world has ever seen. And they love her music all over the world. And jazz starting in the United States, but it's as big in Russia as it is in the United States. Our friend Anya Gurkovsky could tell us all about that, who we saw in the video, her organization, but in Russia, it's beautiful. It's played there all the time.
Well, I know the Beatles did a lot too.
Yes.
I mean, they came from England, but then they came here, and so you've got so many good links, culture-wise.
Well, and Rita,
people get to understand each other better that way.
Well, understanding each other is exactly the key. And I just want to say, in our own area here, the San Antonio Symphony, we've got to bring that orchestra back to the Tobin Center, because we're not whole without it. And those musicians are here. And we've got a board of directors that's trying to make it happen, but they don't see enough resources. So the community has got to rally. We've got to be there for them. We can't just say, hey, good luck fixing that. That's too important to our community. So I just hope we're talking about symphonic music today, but nothing more important than getting that San Antonio Symphony back on their feet. It's just critical. Job one.
From a symphony standpoint, is the average person educated to the classical music of symphonies, and do symphonies tend to play other types of music?
Well, I'm really glad you said that, because in my Symphony of the Hills, I was mentioning we play our children's concerts. The San Antonio Symphony touches tens of thousands of children a year through their extraordinarily robust children's offerings. And so those symphony musicians are teachers and they're performers, and absolutely they can be connected better to our community if we support them. And I just feel like that's going to be really important for our community to address immediately.
Well, it's the Hill Country actually is based in Kerrville, right?
That's right. The Symphony of the Hills is based in Kerrville, Texas. We're sponsored by Schreiner University, where I work, and we're also sponsored by our board of directors and the Callow Theater. There's a beautiful collaboration that makes any symphony happen, and we're just lucky in the Hill Country to have that going on.
So we have a video of your orchestra.
Yay.
Well, I finally found a short one. It's 4 minutes. But you're narrating it, and
Okay.
it really is interesting to get the story of your symphony.
Okay.
You travel all around the hill country, right?
Yes, ma'am. The Symphony of the Hills creates the harmonies that flow from, through, and for all lovers of music in the Texas Hill Country. The mission of this 75-piece performing group is to provide symphonic music to audiences throughout Central Texas. The symphony began in 2001 as an outgrowth of a Kerrville Community Orchestra formed by Schreiner University. Today, that partnership continues with university students, professors, and administrators involved as players and members of the board. My name is Eugene Dowdy, and I am proud to serve as the conductor of the Symphony of the Hills. Each season, the Symphony presents 5 concerts to full houses in the 834-seat Callow Theater in Kerrville. Orchestra members also provide musical support for national acts that come to town, such as Ray Price, the New Orleans Preservation Hall Jazz Band, a Buddy Holly impersonator, and even performances at the Kerrville Folk Festival. Other special guest artists include Dr. Don Crandall, an accomplished pianist and holder of the Atkinson Professorship Award for Teaching Excellence at Schreiner University. The Symphony is especially proud of our outreach to young people to help expand their appreciation of music and developing their musical talents. We partner with youth orchestras, such as the Hill Country Youth Orchestras, and regularly present children's concerts for 1,600 private and public school students from Kerrville and 6 neighboring communities. We also provide discounted tickets to students and their parents. This outreach is important to develop an appreciation of symphonic music, as well as to ensure a future supply of performers and audiences. The Symphony has a solid financial base with support from a mix of individual donors, local foundations, and state funders. Fundamental are those patrons who not only purchase season tickets, but who also provide generous charitable gifts, without which the Symphony could not operate. Individual concerts are sponsored by generous hill country firms. Every member of the board supports the Symphony through their financial investment, but also through leadership and hard work. Thus, administrative costs are kept low with day-to-day management handled by one part-time employee. This fiscal responsibility and broad base of support has helped the Symphony continue to be successful in its programs and financial solvency for 15 successive seasons. While it may be normal for a symphony to serve large cities and metropolitan areas, it's rare for a community the size of Kerrville, with a population of under 25,000, to be home to a 75-piece symphony orchestra. Yet the majority of the players live, work, or study in the Hill Country, with talented professional musicians from nearby cities also joining the group for select performances. Every year, fans of all ages from across the Hill Country are discovering the inspiring, educational, and entertaining music produced by this exceptional group. With continued support of the community and the Symphony's commitment to excellence, the Symphony of the Hills will continue to bring beautiful music to the Texas Hills and contribute to building enthusiasm for classical music throughout the region.
Well, the symphony, your symphony, is 21 years old. Will it be 22 this year?
Well, we're in our 21st season this
you're in
year.
your 21st.
And so next October, when we start our next season, 22nd season.
What is the thing that you do free for the community? That is really very, very nice. Now, before the holidays, what all did you do? I know I read the programs that you had that were free for the public. really nice.
I know what you're referring to. It's our children's concerts that are offered free to the children of the community. Now, our subscription concerts are just like any other arts organization. We have our ticket prices, and they're available online at our website. But I think the event you're referring to is in December. We had our Holiday Hopes concert, and at that concert, we did a beautiful collaboration with UTSA's choral program, directed by Dr. Eugen Moon. And then she brought that entire choir to the Kerrville Callow Theater, and the Symphony of the Hills performed Beethoven's Symphony No. 9, the finale movement of that grand ode to joy, the Song of Brotherhood. And what more important thing do we need to hear right now about being there for each other? And that symphony celebrates that ideal. So it was a joy to present that as our annual holiday concert.
Are there similar organizations to yours? I think in Houston there's a few organizations.
Oh yeah, there's regional professional orchestras actually all over the state of Texas. We're so blessed to have so much music. We've got the Laredo Philharmonic, we've got the Corpus Christi Symphony, we've got the Mid-Texas Symphony right there in Seguin. We've got orchestras in around Austin, Houston, out in El Paso, just there's orchestral music all over the state of Texas. So we're really lucky that people band together to bring this music to the public because it's so relevant. It just helps us understand who we are and where we're going better.
Well, your attendance must be increasing because the hill country is growing population-wise.
It sure is.
So
Everything seems to be pushing out, doesn't it?
Maybe the San Antonio Symphony ought to move that way.
We'd love to have the San Antonio Symphony up in Kerrville. And in fact, some members of the San Antonio Symphony play in our Symphony of the Hills. So also groups like Camerata and Soli, our local chamber ensembles, are just active right now because of what's happening with the symphony. Of course, they're active all the time, but they're really putting the pedal to the metal, trying to get the music out.
Do you musicians get paid?
Yes, ma'am. Every member of the Symphony of the Hills is a paid musician.
That's really interesting that you can make this happen.
Absolutely. We're very fortunate to have that kind of resource in the community.
As far as you have programs for young people?
Yes, our children's concerts every fall, 1,600 children.
Education to educate them to...
Well, we go to every school. It's a little bit unique for our symphony that we send our musicians out to every school and they demonstrate the instruments, maybe a bassoon, maybe a cello, and then the children get to see and hear the music up close, and then they come to the theater for the concert. It's wonderful.
And you teach also.
I am a teacher. I'm at Schreiner University. I retired from UTSA. I was head of the orchestra program there. And then Schreiner University picked me up and said, "Hey, you're retired. We know you'd like to go back to work." So I'm enjoying music at Schreiner University too.
And what is your symphony season?
The symphony season runs from October until April. Our last concert this season will be at the end of April.
So you don't have a summer one?
Sometimes we will have a special summer concert. This summer we're going to actually be involved with the Texas Folklife Festival, the Kerrville Folk Festival. So that's going to be a real joy to be a part of that.
Do you have an international group in your orchestra?
Well, we have certainly musicians who represent the international community. We're a very diverse orchestra, so we're very proud of that. And some of the music we play is of a diverse nature, maybe doing some traditional Hebrew songs at some, American spirituals at another, a Russian hymn at another concert, and maybe even an Asian opera excerpt or something. So we try to represent all cultures.
Do you break them up into smaller groups like a jazz group or
We do. The symphony has a brass quintet.
I didn't know that.
Oh, it's wonderful. We have a brass quintet, we have a symphony string quartet, and they go around and perform for various functions.
So You teach at the university, but you private teaching also.
I don't do very much private teaching.
You don't have any time.
I am very busy with the symphony and with Schreiner, but I do play in a band. I play fiddle and mandolin in a band called Down for the Count. So I'll give a plug for my little band that plays. And we do Texas music, Americana music, a little bit of rock, a little bit of bluegrass.
Do you travel? Have you brought the group to Houston? I mean, to San Antonio?
Well, we do play in San Antonio quite a bit. We played at Sam's Burger Joint. We've played at some venues around. We also have played down at Schrader Dance Hall. It's the second oldest dance hall in the state of Texas, down near Goliad in Victoria. So we enjoy playing. We played in Austin, played down in Corpus Christi. So we get around a little bit.
Touring outside of the state?
Not touring very much because we're all very active musicians in our day gigs. So.
And they're all from the hill country.
Well, this band is actually all from San Antonio that I play in. So.
Well, the history of, instead of wars with guns, you could have wars with music.
Well, they do. Rap music, for example, hip hop, which is a genre that we haven't mentioned, but a very big part of hip hop music is kind of this confrontational give and take, question and answer, and you might have where they even have a playoff of sorts where they rap back and forth. It's a really delightful thing to watch.
Well, it sounds like you've got the music by the tail.
I got a tiger by the tail most of the time.
And your audience is, of course, mixed cultural and national, and so is that pretty much the norm? For instance, would somebody come from Europe that hadn't been here, maybe heard of your orchestra, and
No, that's a great question. I think that people coming from anywhere would be very interested in an orchestra concert because orchestral music kind of crosses all boundaries. If you do it right, if you program right, you're touching all members of your society. So I think you're right. I think people would be attracted to music no matter where they come from. I think that's just part of why we do music. It connects us.
So it's international in scope, not only with the musicians, but with the audience and the culture exchanges.
Well, an organization wants to be relevant in their community. And I think that's also some of the attention that can be focused on the San Antonio Symphony, for example, is some of the issues that they've had. Some people will say, well, are we relevant to the community? And the orchestra needs to be relevant to the community, not just to the, you made a very good point, Rita, a minute ago when you said that, do you have to be educated a certain amount to enjoy the symphony? And my take would be, well, it doesn't hurt. It's very great when you know about Brahms and Beethoven and Stravinsky. But an orchestra, if they're doing it right, anybody can walk in and be touched. And that's how the San Antonio Symphony is. You don't need to be a tie-wearing, snob. It's meant for everybody. But they've got to market it to everybody, and they've got to be inclusive, and they've got to represent everybody.
What about ballet and opera? Do you do any?
Well, I'm certainly a fan. And the San Antonio Ballet, we're so fortunate to have that organization here in San Antonio, as well as the San Antonio Opera. Oh my gosh, they're producing elite, world-class opera productions right here in San Antonio at the Tobin Center.
Rehearsal. Do you have to rehearse a lot also?
Oh my gosh. Yes, you have to rehearse because we want those concerts to be as beautiful as possible. So it takes a lot of planning and some rehearsing. Typically, an orchestra will have maybe 5 or 6 days of rehearsal a week, getting ready for a weekend concert. With the Symphony of the Hills, we don't rehearse every day, but we'll rehearse 1 day a week for about a month, and then we'll give a concert in the Callow Theater. So,
do you have your own hall?
We have a fine rehearsal hall at Schreiner University, the Summerlin Music Building. So that's a very nice facility.
Hope you have a happy week. Hope you have a happy month. Stay green, and let's pray for a happy 2022, a happier one, and stay green.